We can think about problems. We all have them, and organizations have problems, families have problems. I'm told that I have a problem, generally speaking. Usually people who know me well, they have no problem telling me about my problems. So we have that, like, at the end of the day, the week that we had with, I think about the school, they had the high school kids going all around Northwest. What a blessing to launch the year of being in community together, doing things together. And so I started thinking about a question I asked people long ago. I said, if you could solve a problem, any problem, and I said that to the students at one point, well, would you fix people who are hungry? If that was a way to solve the problem, if you could do that. Maybe we'll do this as a test in church one day. But right now, would you fix the problem with food in our world? Or would you maybe think about health? Maybe if we can find healing for those who are has maybe diseases or things like that. If you could focus on one problem, would you do health? Would you do food? What about the oppression around the world? What if we could just find a way to just remove people out of those places of oppression and slavery? This is happening in so many ways in our country and around the world as well. So if we could stop the trafficking, if we could stop this, that problem. And then what about education? People don't have access to learning. So if you want to starve a country and dominate a country, it's not about the resources, it's the way you shut down the fact that kids can't learn. If you can actually keep people ignorant from learning, you can do whatever you want. That's happening around the world. So these are things, but then another problem is, what if you could actually take people who are isolated and alone and bring them into places of community? If you had a chance to solve one problem, which problem would you solve? Food, health, education, oppression? Or would you find a way to connect people together so they would never have to do it alone? Now, people who are more wise or more experienced in life will actually say, I've done all of those things. I've been hungry, I've been sick, I've been all of those things, but the one thing that I would say, don't ask me to do this alone. I can just about do anything if I have somebody to do this together. This is why the New Testament is filled with new commandments, new things, and they're not really new. They're refreshed, repackaged, and asked to the church, the people who decide to say, I want to be a disciple of Jesus, to be in community, to do things to one another. Those phrases we call one another's, we're going to be spending 6 to 8 weeks on them. We started that last week, but today we're going to look at a passage that's a little strange. And before we do that, I want to give some background to our text or our study today. The passage is going to come from the book of Peter. Now, already you need to have the mind framed by Peter, Simon, the disciple of Jesus. Now, we have these rumors and thoughts and assumptions about Peter, but he wrote a beautiful letter. He did 2 of them. The first one, it comes with a little background. I think it would be helpful. First of all, Peter is going to start talking to people at a time, maybe 20 years after the cross and resurrection. Peter is going to say some things to people, and it's on the eve of a massive persecution for all of the Christians. People who are believers are going to be persecuted severely by Nero. And so Peter is going to say, let's remind people who you are. You are exiles. You are aliens. You are all not supposed to be here. We are destined to a different kingdom, a different family. We are moving into this place, but we live in this place as foreigners. Don't get used to this world. So he's saying, when you are in your lives, you're going to be scattered. You're going to be disconnected to the rhythms of this world. Don't get used to this rhythms of life here. We have a different life. There's another passage in there that was so beautiful. He says that you are exiles, right? But also, you're going to not see Jesus. And they're going to, well, we have not seen him yet. So these first Christians, by this time, most of the people who are believers, these are second generation believers, or the people who are converts because they heard the story. They have never met Jesus. He was never by the sea. They were never at that place. He never saw Zacchaeus in the tree. None of these things are very real to them in the same way if you saw it in person. These are people who heard the story and they believed. And Peter starts and says, even though you haven't seen Jesus personally, you what? You love him. What a beautiful way to start this letter is like, even though you haven't seen it. And I go to this chapter every time when I feel like I'm so disconnected to my beliefs. I feel like I'm lost, or I feel like disconnected, and I need to go back and find that there are people who never met Jesus personally, but that story moved them to a place where they said yes and changed their lives. So this group is pretty special. And also, there is another fact really about this background is one of the things that you can see in Peter's talk, he's going to be very direct. Peter is not going to mince words. He's going to talk to you as an adult, and he's going to talk to you like you're a child. He's going to move you to places, and he is going to be direct. He says, it is God's will that by doing good, you will silence the ignorant talk of people. That's right there in his letter. Can you believe that? So if you have people in your life that are bothering you with talk, this is the best thing that you can do, is do good for them. And it'll quiet some of their chatter. You know that chatter. You can see it on social media if you just throw a reminder of what's good. It will change the feel. People are talking in the room, and then somebody says, you know what? In all of this stuff, there's something good. And you know what happens? It just kind of sucks out some of that energy that's maybe negative. So Peter is going to do that. Why does Peter know how this works so much? Because he's a perpetrator of that. He is always the first person saying this and that, and okay, can you just quiet down a bit, Peter. This is his gospel. And he's giving this. And so as we do that, I have like a summary of this book. I just said this. I said, so press on. It is in the darkest times that our collective light shines bright. And if this is true, I'm the chief of sinners, and of this problem, I cause so much drama. And in all of this, in these moments, we need to listen to Peter. And we're talking about the one another's today. I'm going to take you back to what was written earlier and read by Renee. It says this in 1 Peter 4. It starts, and you know this is an important topic when he starts and says, the end of all things is what? Near. So you don't start up and say, hey, how you doing? Or how do you feel? Or let's do a mixer, so to speak. No, the end is near. Therefore, be alert and be of a sober mind so that you might be a prayerful person. So he's going to start out and say, you need to direct yourself and focus. This might be a very important thing. It might be the most important thing. And it says in verse 8, if you think I was kidding, he says, no, above all. What does that mean? It means prioritize this. Whatever you think is really important, it's not. Put this at the top of the list. When you started to get these cues, you start thinking, okay, I'm not really sure I'm going to want to read this. I don't like people prioritizing my life. Like, I like to do that myself. Above all, love each other. How? Deeply. Because love covers what? A multitude of sins. Now, this is not just a simple word, love people well or deeply. This word is actually an intense word. The word means immerse, in earnest, intensely. It's actually the word that we would stretch things out to the end. You think about a bungee cord, right? You push this all the way to the end, right? So it's also with our muscles. Maybe we can do that today, right now. And you don't have to do all of this exercises that I'm going to do right now, but I want you to stand up and take a moment, okay? Come on, I'm not kidding, okay? And if you can't stand up, you can just use your arms. I want you to stretch a muscle right now. Okay, this is my stretch. And I want you to put it slowly into a place that you can't go too far. Look at Sam back there. He's just showing off. All right, well, let's do our legs maybe. Maybe bend over and find those back legs. Wow, I'm in trouble. I got to do soccer with kids this week. I'm in trouble. Yeah. And you can find some muscles. I want you to stretch your muscles, hold it, and then stretch a little bit more, okay? You didn't think you're going to do this in church, did you? Ow. And remember, only words that are in the Bible, please. Actually, no, just use good words. All right, everybody sit down and relax. We have done some stretching. This word, stretching, is the word that's connected to the word love. In other words, you're supposed to love people with the ability to stretch yourself, not the easy, not the minimum, but to stretch it out to do more than you are expected. This is what happens next. So once you are actually stretching this love to one another this way, this is what's going to look like. Next verse. Verse 9, he says, so offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Hospitality is a word that's been used as a spiritual gift. And in history, hospitality has a metaphor. As you know, the pineapple is a symbol of hospitality. Now, how many of you know that? Raise your hand. Okay, my wife is right. And all of them but one are women. So, you're going to get married soon, bro. All right. This is the only dude who understood hospitality, and it's connected. I'll give you some history. The whole idea of hospitality, it really means to welcome foreigners into your life. It's always connected to somehow with food, but it's the idea that you'll welcome a foreigner into your life to bring that friendship, because traveling is awkward, but not only that, you're out of your comfort zone and you're in a different place. But it started in, I think the pineapple, I think it started in Brazil and Paraguay. They were growing these these beautiful pieces of fruit, but when you look at that, I would never, like I said before, I would never eat this, right? This is like a pine cone. You'd kick this thing. But originally, from the idea of pineapples in hospitality comes from the Caribbean. They started bringing the fruit into the Caribbean, the islands and things like that. We have the story when Columbus discovered this side of the world. They started down in the Caribbean. He was welcomed with other people in the villages. They couldn't understand each other, our languages, our culture. Nothing really fit. It didn't fit. It didn't connect. However, they would offer the pineapple as a gift. And it was also on the doorsteps in places like that, because this is one of the beautiful things. Some people say in some of the tribes in South America that did cannibalism, eating. Now, just so you know, I think they found something else, because they found this pineapple. It was so good. They stopped doing that, and then they started using the fruit. That's not true. When I'm playing against the soccer team of Brazil, I always say, yeah, but you guys eat people and stuff like that, but now you do pineapples, and we go back and forth. And they said, yeah, we go back and forth. This is a beautiful fruit. It's a beautiful symbol of hospitality. It actually was one of those fruits that we brought it back to Europe. And they gave the pineapple to royalty and people. This became the most luxurious gift that you could give to people in Europe. And they're saying, if anybody gets one of those things, I want them back here. So they would use it at feasts and things like that, and they would have one pineapple on a table, and they would look at that. And then apparently somebody got to actually eat that. This became something in the following years and centuries. The pineapple became a part of the colonies in America. They would use the pineapple as a symbol at doorposts or hotels, villages. If you were going to be to befriend somebody from out of town, you would use a pineapple as a symbol of friendship. As you came into this church, I don't know if you noticed, but there's a pineapple every door when you came in. Maybe you didn't see that. Wow. But people will actually use this in hotels. And you can actually get a pen for hospitality. If you're good at taking care of people, you get a pen. It's the pineapple pen. So this is now a part of hotels, organizations around the world. They'll use the pineapple as this beautiful gift. I love this. I mean, if we could do it, and I know you grow things, but why can't you put some pineapples out there? Well, they'll freeze. It doesn't work here, but maybe a greenhouse or something like that. This would be good. More importantly, wouldn't it be better if we just had the spirit of hospitality? That it was obvious in our hearts and lives. Offer hospitality to people. And Peter is talking about the end. So why are we talking about this thing, about how you connect with people, friendship and things? Aren't there bigger, better theological things to talk about other than hospitality? And Peter's saying there is nothing else to talk about. There is no truth greater than what you will show to other people by your love, stretching out your love. Why? Because at that time in life, everybody was scattered out of their homes in different places. And the Christian church began to grow together. There were no churches. There were no cathedrals. There were no buildings. It was always someone's living room. So this whole church grew, not in a building or in an arena. It was because somebody has a big living room for 60 people. We start thinking about the church. It's about 50, 60, 70 people gathered into one house. And sometimes they did this regularly. And so this concept, if you were doing that, and if I were to ask all of you to my house every other day, you know what my wife would do? She'd say, "What's up with this, dude? Hey, can we have a break?" We would sit there and say, "Oh, man, I'm tired. Can we just send people away? Can we just have a break?" Peter is actually saying the opposite. Do not retreat. He would say, love deeply. Stretch it out. Do more. It's not easy, is it? He's not asking the easy things. He's looking at a church that's going to be obliterated by violence. How in the world will we survive unless the one thing that we learn from our God is to welcome people into our midst, in our circle, in our lives? If we don't do that, we have no story. We have no theology. We don't have a Sabbath or a truth or anything like that. We have nothing if we don't have a circle that welcomes people into our lives. They did it. In fact, the first century church responded to these words, and it grew. Even though Nero was actually killing Christians by the hordes, it was the love that they had for just about anyone who came in their midst that multiplied. You couldn't kill them fast enough. And they found out this church exploded underneath this
massive persecution. And I do believe, I think at the center of it all is the relationships that we had, the one another moments that people were stretching ourselves out for others. Listen to the history now. I went into my history books on my bookshelves, and I was looking about what the Romans were saying about Christians. Back then, I don't have a quote, but just listen carefully. This is Roman emperor. His name is Flavius. He's complaining about the Christians and their charity. He's being sarcastic. He says this, these impious Galileans, these Christians, they not only do they feed their own poor, but they feed our poor. The Romans welcomed them into their agapes. They called the word agapes as a feast. So when they call about, people would gather together with food. He would call them the agapes. Love personified around a table of welcoming. Wow! They can't even get it right, but when they're doing it, they're telling the truth. They welcome them, the poor, their poor, our poor, he's saying the Romans. They're getting our people in there. And they're welcoming them, and they attract them like a bunch of children were attracted like cakes, he says. They're not happy. While the pagan priests neglect the poor, they hated Galileans devote themselves to work of charity. So their love feasts and their tables spread for the indigents, outcasts, low-life people. Such a practice is common among them. It's a common thing and causes a contempt from our gods. Well, of course, the Roman gods don't like that kind of weakness and lovey-dovey stuff where you're loving each other. They don't like that. And this is why the Roman Empire died. It was because of a group of believers who decided to follow the instructions of a penniless prophet from Nazareth. And that's why when the inside comes out, the world goes upside down. And that's what happened. And you can look at historically, theologically, and you can see it personally in your life. Your best moments when people are bringing kindness and hospitality into. When in your life can you remember when somebody surprised you with hospitality to you? You could probably find those moments. And all of it, there is this part of it, though. In this passage, it says, offer hospitality without what? Grumbling. Is the Greek word gagosmos. 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 I have to say it a few times. Don't do it. And don't Google this, because if you Google this word, you'll get it wrong. This is what you get if you put this in Google right now. You're going to get this candy. It's beautiful. I think it's, if I translate this, and I'm not doing this correctly, but I think it means, a type of spicy or something that you can't stop eating, a thing. And somebody's, or you're going to get this thing. You're going to put this word in Google and you'll find God Moss or Moss God or whatever. Either way, I would avoid this stuff. I think it's, I don't know if it's illegal, probably illegal. Maybe it's not in Washington. Everything's kind of okay here now. But maybe there's another way. You can take that word and you can put in Google and you'll find this guy here. He's a musician, right? And this is not what we're talking about. This word, gogosmos, this thing it's a Pastor Troy original. This is my thing. I put the word gogosmos and a line in it. You'll see that in the next slide. I put my own stamp of approval. It means no murmuring, no muttering, no grumbling. The actual word, it's what you say underneath your breath. You know what I'm talking about when you are being passive-aggressive. Okay, Warren, thanks, Warren. And I say, well, man, Warren's always working me like, and you say it underneath your breath. Yeah, have a great day. I wish you'd stop another day. Oh, you brought pasta again. Did you know most people are not doing carbs as much? And you get all of this stuff underneath your breath. It's this, but we see it even more when we do outright complaining. Peter is saying, do hospitality, stretch it out with love, and do it without what? Without complaining. And I'm thinking about this beautiful word. I put it on a coffee cup, and you can hand it out for people if you want to. However, I did the orientation for a left-hander. I put the sticker on the other side, so if you're going to do it left-handed, they're always right, and you're the complainers. Because everything else in the world is set up for right hand. I think I'm complaining right now. Okay, I am sorry. But what would happen if we were just the muttering and complaining? I'm so good at this. And if you think you do this, you need to get a PhD in this like I do. I know how to find the holes. I know to see what's wrong. I can find something that's broken. I do it so well. And I'm saying today, there is a better way. A better way. I do think that passage that it says that love can cover all of those multitudes of sins. When you have your sins exposed, don't you want to have that covered? I know I do. I was thinking about what Jesus would say to the Pharisees. He would say, woe to you, you teachers of the law and the Pharisees. You're a bunch of hypocrites. You tithe this, but you don't tithe your heart for a broken person. You have enough measurement for your spices, but you have no love left over for someone else. And so I'm thinking about the complaining that I've done before, and I'm just going to testify here. If it's relates to you, it's an accident, okay? More maybe Peter is just speaking directly to you. But when we think about the complaining, what does it really do? Like, what does it do? Number one, this is what I reflected on this. When I start thinking about complaining, I hyper-focus on my perceived problems. I hyper-focus. And all I see is what I see as the problem. And this happens just about every time I do this. You also tend to forget what God is about and what He is for you and what He's done for you. It's almost like you completely put God in another room in your life because your problem is so important. Again, I wrote this 2 weeks ago, so I broke my rules about 6 times on Wednesday. On Wednesday! Number 3, it doesn't really solve a problem. Complaining does not solve a problem. It doesn't take a genius to say something is broken. Also, it's not really a very compelling testimony, is it? It really isn't. You know, when you're saying that, I want to work for you because I hate my boss. He's a jerk. I'm thinking, what are you going to say it in 3 weeks? Something similar. Like, I had a friend who was a manager. He has a Baskin-Robbins. And this one person wanted to work at Baskin-Robbins from Dairy Queen. And this person keeps over there, I just want to work over here. I don't like Dairy Queen. They have bad. And they started complaining about their Dairy Queen ice cream. He says, nope, no job. What? You need... It says I'm hiring people who are not complaining about my job. So you come back and you tell me what you like about working at Dairy Queen. What? I want you to tell me what you like about Dairy Queen. This kid came in there and said, well, it's a little bit more efficient to get by this, and this, and this, and I can't think of anything better than having chocolate that gets hard on top of your ice cream. That's just amazing, right? You're hired. You're not going to get that stuff over here, but you learned the lesson, right? I think about the final words to Jesus. Remember we talked about it in the beginning of July, where Jesus is saying, the mission is, on the eve of leaving, be ascended up there. He says, you are going to be witnesses. You are going to bear witness in your life to Jerusalem, to us, to Judea and Samaria, when you get scattered out there, and when we get all the way to Turkey and Spain, and all the way into the east and down in North Africa, it's going to flourish. But you're going to have to bear witness. So this week, Morgan, my traveling buddy, we went down to Walla Walla for a day to welcome our freshmen at CCA on a trip. So we did a little bit of food out there. We had a great time. And the next day, we're trying to get back to Walla Walla. I go to the gas station, and I fill up the gas tank. Topped it out. And then I went to start on the car, and it wouldn't turn over. I mean, it was trying, but something's wrong with the fuel. And it was in that moment my fuel pump failed. And everyone who has ever had to do this, they know, well, it's good if you don't have any gas in the tank. Totally filled. 26 gallons in the pickup truck. Hot. Morgan's looking at me. I have no way to fix this. And all I had to do was call one friend. This person, he says, yeah, he stopped what he was doing. He had an appointment. He had something to do that was due. And I said, don't you have a dossier that's done? You have to do that for the university. He says, oh, like they know who I am. I'll get it later. He's going to be in trouble because of this decision. He put my truck into the shop and we dropped it down. Took 3 or 4 of us to lift this thing and make sure that this tank filled with, got this thing replaced, popped it in there, raised it up. In an hour and a half, we had cranked it up, and something was wrong. The sensor inside of the pump was not working. So when I turned on the engine, it pumped up. It's doing great. The pump is working, not the sensor, which means I have an engine light and I have no gauge. In other words, my tank is what? Empty. The light is on right now, full, but it's empty. And my dear friend said, let's bring it back down, we'll get another one. That means there's something in the part that's wrong, it's covered, no problem, we'll do this again. He says, no, I gotta go, and actually I think I need this. He says, what? I said, I need that light right now. I need the light that tells me I'm empty. That I need to be aware that I have nothing to offer. I don't have answers or solutions. I'm empty. Don't you think if it would be better for all of us to start the day on empty? I'm not talking about breakfast, having the best meal. I'm talking about starting with the mindset that I'm empty. So I decided to go. Now I have done the math of how many gallons I have left and my mileage, and I'm aware of my resources. I'm aware. And I'm thinking right now, I needed a way to be reminded that the problems and the issues and the bugaboos of my life are framed in the life of blessing and grace and God's promise that any trouble is never compared. It's not conceivable of what God has for all of us, for those who love God. That's not a bad way to start, right? It says this, and I'll finish this. Is if you're afraid of hospitality, then you don't have much personal strength or personal wealth. Good. Good for you. You won't be intimidated. You won't intimidate anyone. You will depend all on the grace of God. You will look all the more to the work of Christ and not on your work. And what a blessing people will get in your simple home, in your little apartment, and your moment where you lavish God's grace because you love Him. I do believe that our Lord is coming soon. And I don't think it's hard to imagine that as this world gets harder and harder, it's going to get darker and darker. We're going to need to be people who are like lights. And it doesn't take like a giant beam to light a darkness. It's very simple. I'm going to ask Yanni, is he here? He's got a song that's very similar. It's going to remind us what's going to happen at the end. And are we the people that God is calling us to be?